Hello and welcome. It is Thursday, December 15th. It's 7:04 p.m. This is the WORT Board of Directors meeting for December. And I'm doing 17 things at once. The agenda has been out on the drive and I sent a link to that. So I'm calling the meeting to order. Are there any additions or changes or corrections to the agenda? Hearing none, we will consider the agenda adopted. Sorry, I'm typing in the wrong place on my minutes. The November minutes have been in the drive and linked on the agenda document. Are there any additions, corrections to the minutes from the November meeting? Hearing none, we will consider those adopted without objection. I would like to welcome, sorry. Somehow I've engaged Siri and I don't know how to get rid of her. What? Can you hear that, or is that just me who hears Siri in my ears?
I don't hear anything, Dave.
Okay, good. I would like to welcome new board member Ankita Bharadwaj, and I'm sure I messed that up. Ankita, can you tell me how to pronounce your name?
Yes. Hi, everybody. This is my first meeting, and my name is Ankita Bharadwaj. I understand that my last name is a little bit tricky, and so it'll take time. That's fine. But for now, we can, just go with Ankita.
Ankita.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
And glad you're joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
I
We're
love
an
your
interesting
show.
group. Okay. This is the item on the agenda with communications from the public. Are there any members of the public who would like to say something? Hi, Thistle, go ahead.
Hey, David, thanks. Yeah, I was just wondering about the Diversity, Inclusion, and Equity Committee and how, that when that committee is meeting and how people in the community can get involved, and also just what kind of diversity, inclusion, and equity is the committee looking at, and how can members like myself, I'm a member of WORT as a contributing member, a listener sponsor. It's humble, it's not a huge amount, but I'm not a volunteer. And I could become a volunteer. I'd like to be involved. And so I was just wondering how I can learn more about the Diversity, Inclusion, and Equity Committee. And that's why I was here tonight.
Thank you. I will say something and then let anybody else speak. We started out the group as a work group, and that's a more informal form of a committee. It is not required to make meetings public and to give public notice and so on. Then we switched its form to a committee. Then we switched it back to a work group. We're still trying to figure out exactly how it works. there was an item added to our agenda just 46 minutes ago, suggesting some more educational background about the DEI process. So we're still learning as we go. Are there any other board members who would like to make a statement? Amber, did you want to say anything about DEI?
Yeah, I appreciate the question from the public.
You're a little quiet.
Thank you for coming and asking.
Sorry, your audio is not coming through very well.
You can try turning the
Can you hear
video
me?
off.
Okay. Will do. Can you hear me now?
Much
Is
better.
that better? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I am not currently a member of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Are you hearing me okay?
Yes.
So my board colleagues are, I mean, thank you for asking me, David, to speak. My board colleagues are aware that I have taken a very strong position that the DEI entity at the station should be a committee that is public facing, that allows for the participation of the public, and that the sooner the better. So we've had lively discussion about this the last few meetings, and I think the discussion will probably continue. We have had a discussion about this being transitioned from a work group to a committee early next year, but I'm not sure that there has been a binding vote on that. So again, I take the very strong position that it's only 40 years too late to make the diversity committee a committee that's public facing and involves the public. My understanding from notes from one of the staff members who's involved with the DEI committee currently is that they're working on a survey. We're not there yet in this agenda. I have some concerns about the survey and its ways that it may not help us move us forward. So I will have some things to say about that when we get to that part of the agenda. So that's all I would say at this point, David.
Thank you, Amber.
Yeah.
Susan, you were on the committee on the DEI work group, are you not?
Yes.
Can I put you on the spot and ask you to say something?
Sure. But the work group was a work group for a while, and then in August, without any members of the work group present, the board did not have it on its agenda, so none of us attended. The board made the decision to switch it from a work group to a committee. The work group came back and asked that we be able to do a little bit more preliminary work before we became a committee. And that request was granted at least until the February meeting where we would revisit it. So I just wanted to give you a little more detail on that. I picture that we will be open to the public at some time. It might be as early as starting after the February board meeting. It might be a little later, depending on what concerns we may have about making that public before, making meetings public before then. But it is something that I think is the goal of every member of the DEI work group, is to transition to a committee. I think the only differences are what the work group members believe is an appropriate time, given some of the internal stuff that we're looking at in the meantime, and a chance to be a little bit more prepared and not quite as disorganized as I think we are now before we face the public. That's all I have to say.
Thistle, you have a question?
Yeah, it's my understanding that the working group is open to volunteers at WLRN, or I mean WORT, sorry. Is that correct?
No, the working group determines its membership. Any working groups get to determine their own membership. So there are several working groups at WORT besides DEI, and the groups themselves determine the membership. So I have a fundraising group. The condition is you have to be or have been a professional fundraiser to be part of that work group. There's an event.
Interesting. Okay,
So
thank you
it's
for explaining that.
totally up to the work groups to determine what their conditions are.
And so the members are hand selected into the group.
The group forms and then they determine what the criterion is. Right now, it is limited to volunteers and board and staff members.
Mhm. So
sure
just,
we
so
go-
if, for example, if I were to become a volunteer at WORT, which is like what, 2 hours a month or 5 hours a month, or what is it, how many hours do you put in to become a volunteer?
Depends on which job you're doing as a volunteer. You can't be a volunteer for the basis of being on a work group. That does not count to volunteer hours.
Right, right. And you also explained that the work group determines who the members are, and you know, just because you're volunteering doesn't mean that you would be invited to be a member.
I don't know that we've ever refused. You know, only on, I don't know how the other groups work, the other work groups, Thistle. And I know that on the fundraising group, I've made it a firm condition that you have to be a professional.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense, you know, to organize a group around a certain purpose. And when it comes to diversity, inclusion, and equity, you know, that means opening it up, you know, maybe having some inclusion and equity and diversity in the process, you know.
I
It's,
would see that as being something that comes up when it becomes a committee.
sure. Thanks for explaining the difference.
You're welcome.
Okay, continuing on with communications from the public, there are two other people who I don't recognize, Bailey and Emily. Did you want to speak at this point?
No, I don't have anything to contribute right now.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. I think we can move on. There were no executive committee actions since the last meeting. Hang on a minute, I have to look at something else here. I'm going to ask us to table the election of a secretary until the next meeting. We still don't have a secretary, but that may change.
Point of clarification.
Yes,
Yeah, I think there was discussion about that board members are supposed to actively serve on two committees, but I think the idea was mentioned that perhaps secretary and treasurer do not need to serve on a second committee. I think that was mentioned. No,
I can't tell you for sure. I don't know.
okay, cool. Well, I guess we can figure that out for the next meeting if
Right.
that's important to know.
Mm-hmm. So the first reports that we'll get to are the Treasurer and Finance Committee. I just added some of those items to the agenda tonight. The meeting notes are linked on the agenda document, and the Sorry,
The
I'm
action
looking at,
items?
and the action items, yes.
Yes.
So if I think at this point, it would be appropriate to turn it over to the treasurer. Kai, would you like to speak to those items?
I would for you to ask. Certainly, there are two items to review on behalf of the Finance Committee. Apologies for the delay in sending that out, but our meeting was yesterday and I got the notes compiled and then wanted to have a review before I sent out the actual notes. So that's why they're a little delayed than usual. And also our meeting got pushed up. So typically there'd be a week time difference between when the meeting is and when the Finance Committee meets. So that's why. But there are two action items to consider. I'll just read them both, and then we will go into the details of each of them. First one is that the WORT-FM Finance Committee recommends to the board that the board adopts the investment plan proposed by Marissa Menzel of the Wisconsin Financial Group to, one, transfer the whole of $50,000 from the Heartland Credit Union money market account to a fixed annuity plan. Two, transfer the $50,000 from the Summit Credit Union checking account to a conservative investment portfolio. And three, transfer $100,000 from the Summit Credit Union money market account into a new high interest yield savings account. That's all one action item. So it's directing that the money be moved from Summit and Heartland Credit Union into different investment plans recommended by the Wisconsin Financial Group. Second one, action item, is that separate from the first, is the Finance Committee recommends the board approve Wegner CPAs to conduct our annual 2023 audit. This includes approval of an extra $900 beyond the 2023 budget amount for a total of $10,300. This amount was already previously approved by the board in last month's meeting, but now there's just been an unanticipated increase of $900 to the previously budgeted amount, and that's why we're requesting an extra $900. Back to the first one, in the notes, you'll see that there is a PDF linked to investment notes from Marissa Menzel. They're discussing the multiple options of investment for us. And the three that were highlighted and honed in on by our Finance Committee were the fixed annuity plan, conservative investment portfolio, and high interest yields. For the first one, the fixed annuity plan, the highlight of that one is that $50,000 invested. You can't lose money on that. The recommendation by Marissa Menzel was a 4% increase over the span of 3 years. So that money is locked away for 3 years. You can withdraw. There will be penalties if you withdraw. And I don't remember the exact penalty. I would guess it'd be a 10% penalty for withdrawing early, but I would have to refer back to the specifics when I have a conversation with Marissa. But so that's kind of the highlights there, that we put the $50,000 in, and then we start getting the word is disbursements, I think, from it at that point. So instantly, you already start seeing a return on that 4%. For the conservative investment portfolio, the one downfall of that is that you can potentially lose money in that. So we're putting $50,000 in something that could potentially lose money on that, but the risk is low for that one. So it's kind of like, for the chance of having higher gains, we could be putting the $50,000 into something that can potentially outpace a 4% growth rate. So while there is risk there, there also are certain limitations that we can put on it. Like perhaps if it reaches a certain amount, we get to 1%, we can withdraw from it. So those are some ideas to ease any concerns that you may have about putting money into an investment portfolio. The third option is a high interest yield savings account. It's functions typically similarly to a regular savings account, just at a higher interest rate. There are three options in my notes that I sent out, but those aren't the only options that we could go with. Typically, the interest rate's 3%, what I've seen across the board. If you choose any standard banking like Ally Bank or Marcus by Goldman Sachs, or even Betterment, there's a couple other options out there. That's about 15 times the national average. And for basically the only penalty is that you put it in the online account, you can only withdraw $100,000 a day. The money's safe. So the only limitation is that you can only withdraw $100,000 at a time. We're recommending putting $100,000 in, so we bypass that limitation. So the money is easily accessible within the course of a day. So those are all the concerns that we have there. It sounds like we may have a question from someone, but I can't see everyone all at once on my phone. Did anyone have a question? Okay, maybe I made it up in my head. Okay, well, that's the first one. Yeah, what's the next process here, Dave?
Well,
Oh, okay, Stu.
yeah, can you remind me, what was the process of initiating this discussion with the advisor, and how did that all play out? I mean, I'm trying to, did we say something at a previous board meeting that we wanted to come up with something to do, or is this?
This was
the-
initiated in the finance committee.
Okay, and what was, and why?
Because the savings account interest rates were low,
Okay,
and we wanted to see if we could do better.
okay, and what was our what previous, where did Marissa Menzel come from? Have we worked with her?
We've worked with her in the past
Okay.
for a couple of different things. Susan, could you cover what we did with Marissa? There were two things.
She set up the savings account, the stock account for us so that people contribute stock through there and then sell it, and the money goes to, it becomes, money that we can use. And secondly, she was our pick to handle the simple IRA for staff members. So she is in charge, she is in charge of that for staff members. So we've worked with her, I think it'll be since 2015 now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for filling in that context, Susan. I didn't have the context on Marissa's past work with us. I will say that currently working with her is pretty delightful. Does anyone else have any questions regarding this action item from the Finance Committee? Okay, I'm not seeing anything from anyone. Dave, is this a point at which perhaps we could vote on this
Can
action?
I add to that, that the Finance Committee was looking at a pretty steady rate of $600,000 that we've maintained over, I believe now it'll be a 2-year period. And we were saying, are we getting the best we can as a rate of return with no to little exposure of losing any money? And that's where the Finance Committee just came from, of approaching someone about saying, can you look this over for us? Are we doing the best we can? And I have to say the savings account is such an improvement over what we currently have. I would, think that in the future, we might even consider adding more to that.
Right, I will affirm that statement, especially when it comes to high interest yield accounts. It's FDIC insured, so it up to $1 million in one of the options there. At $250,000, the standard rate at which the account would be secured. But yeah, there's definitely potential for it to grow, and as you put more money in there, that's a higher percent rate that you're growing on top of it. So yeah, I see that as only a positive for us.
And no penalty for taking money out of it anytime.
Right, that's correct. There is no penalty for the high interest yield savings account, as well as that we will still have money in our checkings account. So the amount that we recommended is a total of $200,000. There's still $400,000 plus available in our checkings and other reserves that we'll be able to access at any point. So if we need this is just kind of like money that we're strategically putting in a different bucket. That's how I see it.
And the only money that we can't access except with a penalty is the 50,000 that goes to the
The
fixed
fixed
annuity?
annuity. That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
Otherwise, you'll be able to access the $100,000. You'll be able to access the $50,000 you can withdraw from
Okay.
that. There may be a transaction fee associated with that. That's not a detail I've associated or discussed yet with Marissa, but I imagine if there were, it'd only be in the neck of $20, I would imagine. But I can check back on that with you if there's any other penalties for withdrawing from any of the other accounts.
Is it that the risk you really assume here is that you might have to forfeit some of the interest you make, but your principal is okay? Should you need it earlier?
Yes.
Okay, so if you're making essentially nil on a savings account or a checking account or wherever, that's a pretty nice upside. Yeah, and if you really need it, well, you're back to where you were.
Right.
Yeah, again, these are very low risk investments, and that's why she's made them for us. Since the concern that we didn't want to run up against was the idea of like, oh wow, the board just gambled away all our money. Like, what are we doing now? Like, that would be fiscally irresponsible. But we are going into this with a strategy, and that's why we're asking for your approval to move forward with these things.
And caution is useful because the WORT board in the past has done that and has lost a significant amount of money. So, Stu, you have
for
a
being
hand
honest,
raised.
Dave, to help my case here, but yeah, no, I mean,
No, we
that
got to
is
be
the
brutally
board
honest.
context,
So,
no, yeah.
Stu,
Yeah, they're very low risk here. The only one that really contains risk is technically there's $50,000 with penalty risk on the fixed annuity plan. And then if we don't have guardrails on our $50,000 from the conservative investment portfolio, then yeah, there is risk there. But if we know we're going to withdraw at a certain point, like if we make a plan, like you don't plan to fail, but you plan for, I don't know, if failure happens. So, we can pull our money out before it even starts getting into the negative, and then we'll be back at $50,000. So we just lost the opportunity to gain money. We didn't lose any money. So if you want to think of it that way, then yeah, that's how I see it.
okay. Stu, you had your hand up before? Okay, good. Okay. Other discussion?
Mhm.
So for the question of moving money around to different accounts, are there any other questions or concerns?
Thank you, Amber. Thanks, Ankita.
Look at that.
So all in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. Aye.
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 All opposed, say no. Are there any abstentions? Now, the next question is to use Wegner CPAs for our audit. Wegner has done the last, I don't know how many audits we've done. Working with an auditor is somewhat difficult because each organization is different and the way we do our accounts is different. And we've worked with Wegner for years. They know how our accounts are set up. And in fact, we've used their advice on how we set up our accounts so that they're easier to audit. So we're still discussing when that will take place. And we haven't arrived at a date for that yet, but we're seeking the board's approval to use Wegner and to approve the cost increase. Is there any discussion of that question?
I just want to point out that Wegner increased the price 10% across the board for their quotes. So that's why we are even asking this, even though we had previously budgeted. We had approved it. We had previously budgeted for it. It's just the increase was unanticipated. That's all.
Is that that's a typical number then for an annual audit for the accountants?
Yes,
10% seems a little steep, though. This is over last year or the last time we did the audit,
correct.
and that
And
was how long ago?
last year.
Mhm.
And last year, the price went up also because auditing during a pandemic is more difficult. It changed. They have a hard time because if one of their auditors gets sick, it slows things down. And doing remote audits is what's required in these cases. And so less field work is done at the station. We prepare a whole bunch of stuff and then hand it off to them, and then they take it to their office and go over it and then ask us lots of questions.
I understand that. I'm just wondering if we are going to have to expect a 10% increase year after year now.
I hope not, but it's hard to say what the future will bring. So
Yeah.
Point
Aye.
here to Laura's comment. Susan, actually, would you want to discuss the, during our meeting, you actually brought about a good point about potentially, do you want to bring that up, Susan? Or do you know what I'm talking about? Are you mind melding with me here?
I'm not sure which point you're thinking about, Kai. What are you?
Potentially haggling? Is that
Yeah.
seen? Is that
Or,
I do
bad?
think that we need to ask them early, because if we ever decide to go with someone else, waiting till November or even December to book an audit for the next year in time to complete your 990s and other stuff that flows from that audit is very tight. And all of the people that do audits in town already have existing customers. I do know that whoever, if we were to change, it's going to be relatively expensive because the intricacies of our accounting are something that it takes a while to get a handle on. So the first time another agency does it, they're going to have to be putting a ton of hours into it. So I think we should query Wagner as to whether they anticipate these 10% increases every year and do some investigation in the first half of the year about the possibility of switching. It's just at this point, I think we're over a barrel as far as it's Wagner or we're really screwed this year, waiting till December to make this decision.
Laura,
I think that I would like to hear their justification for the 10% increase, just to push back a little bit, not too much, but just to let them know that we're not overly comfortable with a rate increase of that magnitude.
I put the letter from Wagner, which explains that in the folder, and it's on the agenda. It's linked when it says approve using Wagner CPAs to audit WORT fiscal year 2022. That's in there. So there's a 3-page letter that is very apologetic about the change, but
Okay.
I will, before I say yes to them, I will see if there's any room for change.
Yeah, I'll have to find that. I don't see it, but I'll look it up.
Okay.
Dave, is it possible for you to ask them? I know we've, in the past 2 years, we've done more work before the audit than we ever have of getting things complete. So that the last time they told us it took them 2 days to do our audit. Is there anything that we could be doing beyond what we're already taking on for prep that would make things any less expensive?
I will certainly ask them that question. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would just like to point out that in the email, it does say the proposed fee for the 2022 audit is $10,300. So maybe they are expecting us to counter. Maybe it's like one of those games where you haggle a little bit. Like that's kind of what it's like back I don't know. I've been to markets like that where you're kind of expected to haggle, and when you don't, it's like, oh well.
I should also
Really?
mention, Kai, that even though we had the amount for Wegner in the budget, the board had not approved using Wegner as our auditors for the 2022 fiscal year. So what we're doing tonight is, number one, approving Wegner, and number two, approving the additional change. But thank you for saying proposed. So I think it's also based on their estimate of field hours, and if the field hours estimate is lower, they'd reduce the cost. But I'll find out, and once I'm done, I will come back to the board and let you know in an email what I find. So, but I would like to, if possible, get the approval tonight so that we can make the commitment. I don't want to book too far out, and so we have to be very careful not to have the audit going on at the same time we're doing a pledge drive, and we have to give the staff enough time to bring the materials together for the audit. So, and when everybody's tied up getting ready for a pledge drive, they can't also be scurrying around getting documents together. So that's why we're being careful about the timing and sequencing. Other discussion? Hearing none, the question before us is approval of Wegner and approval of the additional amount. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 All opposed, say no. The motion carries. David finds his mouse, which is lost on another screen. The next report is the Technology and Facilities Director report from Tom. There are no action items in that, but Tom is with us on the Zoom call. The engineering committee and Tom believe that we're going to start early in 2023 to order the equipment to do the audio over IP, and then schedule the electrical work and all the other work that's required to make those changes.
It's okay if you're in the background.
So we have already approved the cost of that, and that's just to inform you of what's going on there. In addition to that, I put the mural project update under the Technology and Facilities Director report because the mural is a facilities item, and Patrick has an update on the mural project. He has changed his proposal around a little bit, and that's been in the drive. Patrick, would you like to speak to that?
Sure. Thanks, David. Yeah, I wasn't exactly sure how to go about submitting that, so I appreciate you incorporating it in the agenda there. I think it'd be a good idea just to kind of see, just for me to summarize where we are, so we're all on the same page. We've been investigating a mural for for over a year now. It's just to check into it, and that was the basis for the first proposal that was sent out, supported by Tom, Shali, and Adrian, and myself. So internally, in the last year, we had agreed to pursue the study of this up to and through a trial case, or as far as we could get without any obligation to anybody or incurring any costs. So we've done that, and we've kind of reached that point. And the last, in November, we had Enrique Nardi come in and visit. He's a prolific muralist here in Madison. He was referred to us originally by the City of Madison Arts Program Administrator. So we met with him twice. We met with him in November of 21. And then we met with him again last month. Now, our understanding was that he had some grant money and we could perhaps tap that and learn more about this process and see how far we got without obligating ourselves or imposing on him too much. What we found recently is the grant money that he has is specific to one design, which is not a good fit, and both sides we recognize that very early. So here we are. So we've kind of backed out from this process, and we got some feedback from other staff members, and Ricky's listening in, my partner here, because she's interested to see how this works out too. So yeah, that there should be a lot more input from the community. And although Enrique Narde is a wonderful artist, I mean, by no means can we award this to one artist without going to a broad or more open process, and that that what we eventually choose should represent the WRT community. So revisiting the process, I sent out an attached proposal, and so if anybody has any questions on it, I can just very briefly summarize that, or kind of cut to the back part of that where I am making a specific request.
I'm sharing Patrick's document with the essentially the action item highlighted in yellow there. So you can take a look at that while Patrick talks about it.
Okay. All right. Thanks, David. So where we've gone here is we've got a little bit more input. The equipment is more, well, we're a year older on the mural, and I'd like to formalize a process. I mean, essentially to go forward and go public with this. And a lot of the inspiration that I get, or the model I've used, is what was done at the Mifflin Street Co-op pre-COVID, where they got a lot of publicity and started gathering money and interest and put out inquiries for artists or in the community, who would people refer, what kind of ideas would be brought forward, or what concepts. So the request here is, this was met very well. I mean, the neighbors I've talked with here, and Mike Verveer had some very positive comments. He's very pleased to see this. He thinks we're about due for we're due for a facelift on the building. So I put a few different examples in here. You've seen this form before, and the request I'm making is to announce this, to get some of the parties that are interested to announce this internally within WORT, to make a separate team of limited duration to develop the mural, a formal mural project, and representatives of the community, staff, volunteers, or listener sponsors. So there's a broad community with a lot of creativity and ideas, and to try to incorporate that, which is a big task ahead. So the initial
Patrick,
goals are, yes, go ahead, please.
Are board members also allowed on that group?
Well, I think certainly,
okay,
they would be. You know, I should say that this did start out as part of the facilities and engineering committee, but there's a lot of just more urgent messages about keeping quality broadcasts and technical issues that are deeper, that are involved in that. And this to me strikes, I think, in talking with Tom and others, it's more aesthetics and our brand and the visual representation that we have. within the community. So did I answer your question, David?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Susan asked a question in chat. And that question is there an amount that we would be publicizing that we would pay the muralist?
The numbers that I've gotten so far are very rough. And how much of that is the muralist, and how much execution do they undertake? Do they buy all the paint, do all the labor? Do we do some of the labor ourselves? Enrique Nardi talked a lot about his North Street, the Eakin Park mural that he finished recently. And he said that there were 30 people that were involved in that. Some people would come by one day and say, hey, can I pick up a brush? And he'd point them there. So that might be, $20,000 was a real high number that he thought. To get started, he said that the interesting thing about North Street, he said there were 3 separate businesses sharing one exterior wall, and all 3 of them had to agree. And he said, I see WORT like that. I had to iterate several times, and he said, I got 20% of my fee up front. So it is possible that some money might be needed to get through the conceptual phase. If we have artists, an artist, or if we decide to, like the Mifflin Street, old Mifflin Street Co-op, if we went that way, there would be invite artists and then shortlist and work with just a handful, just a few. And I think then at that point, you probably have an obligation to compensate them in some way. But 20% of a total, you could run into a few $1,000s early in the project. The timeline that I propose here is to get out and do this soon. My term, I'm on a 1-year term, and I'm happy to lead this and organize it, and to get the direction that we need to. That's the flow chart at the end there. David, there's a little block diagram at the end. I would like to see that.
Is that showing now?
Let's see, my screen.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah, there. So really, before we were going to see what we could do to get to a permit stage. And that was seen as a fairly onerous process to get to that permit, and that the city is very particular. Verveer said he would support our application, and he said just, you walk through it with the city and the people that are involved. It's not as onerous as you might think. There's not as many people involved as there used to be. So the balloons that I've added here above artistic concept is to form a committee. And this is what I'd be looking for guidance, from this group on, or advice on who to include in that from the stakeholders that maybe an original muralist or one of the 20-some people that signed. You might need some funding. Susan, that's your question. As we go along, we might need a few $1,000s to get to the concept. And then the outreach is something a number of people here have told me that they would be, they believe there's a lot of funding available for this, and not just a grant that is very specific, but to talk to different organizations and businesses here. That the people that Verveer said that we should interface with in January, they have monthly meetings for the Capital Neighborhoods Incorporated, and they would be very supportive of this. He says he is there, the police are there, the neighborhood businesses around here, the Echo, the Bar Examiners, Findorf, a lot of the people that have funded projects in this neighborhood, and then also the real estate people, what's the name of that group that's urban land interests. Yeah. So I think there's money available, but again, to be really cautious not to interfere with or cannibalize our existing fundraising. Because I mean, that's something that I'd be willing that if we know who's not contributing in the area, I think that would really be helpful. I think, Susan, that would be good information to find from that if you could support, that would be good.
Kai has a question.
Yeah, Patrick, I just want to say, I really enjoy this proposal, the revision. I like the energy you have behind it. I like where it's going. I read through the request. It seems pretty good. I know you're talking a lot about funding. I know that you wanted it to be part of maybe like a future discussion, but I don't know if it would really heed the progress. If anything, it might actually help contribute to the progress if that were maybe the fourth point there, to, including with the 3 points that you made in your request. Maybe there should be a special fourth point to investigate funding sources, which may include grants and or donations to fund this project. So something along those lines. Yeah, I do think that it's something that you'll be like thinking about, I'm sure, as this group's put together, this work group. But I do think it'd be good to formally address it as part of one of the points of the request.
Okay, so
that's the only thing.
Okay, so like the last point there, instead of begin funding drive via CNI, it could break that out into a fourth point.
Yeah, just to emphasize that we're investigating grants, because I know I've seen community grants for artwork proposals around the city before, so I definitely think that there'll be a lot of momentum leading into it, and I do think that financing will be a big part of it. That's just wanted to emphasize that in the request.
Other questions? Susan has a hand up and Stu has a hand up. Stu, go ahead first.
Yeah, Patrick, this ad hoc team, this mural project ad hoc team is going to first somehow create consensus on the concept, agree on a concept. I assume that gets run by the board. And then after determining the concept, then it will seek to choose an artist. Is that right? Those are the steps in the process. Well, once we have my question is, are we going to have a firmly established concept of what the design is going to be before or after we solicit artists?
I think that you would need to put the word out and get artists to bring their ideas here, with the idea that it's a community that we would be, what our agenda is. I mean, what is the mission of WRT? What do we stand for? And there's a couple different ideas. I mean, getting an artist involved and having them propose this, I think one of the things one of the processes that is ongoing here is this Monona lakefront and how they're doing that. And they are inviting developers to make proposals. So I think the first step would be just to find out who's interested. If you'll need an artist, to choose an artist or of some type, or whether they partner with another artist, if that's possible. But you'll need to choose them. So the first step is going to be soliciting interest. At least this is how Mifflin Street Co-op did it. Solicit interest from artists immediately and ask within the community. Advise that we're taking, we're bringing in ideas to redo the outside of the building.
So then the committee itself, well, so what happens if we get an artist who proposes an idea that we really like, but they do not have the technical skills to execute? I mean, depending on, I don't understand. I mean, you've got this committee creating consensus on concept and choosing an artist, but it sounds like the committee is going to choose the artist based on criteria that I don't fully understand yet.
Can I make a point here?
Susan has had her hand up for a while, so I'd like to give
Gotcha,
her a
sorry.
chance to respond first.
I don't think that Stu had his question answered. I'd like to wait. He just posed a question. I'd like to hear the answer before I go.
Okay.
It's possible that Kai thought he had the answer to the question.
I did want to say that. So typically, I just went through Jenny Gao had recently proposed to do a mural for a project for Madison Metro, and typically the concepts that are proposed to there's like a request for proposals. They make proposals based on art that they are capable of producing because they want to become the artist that gets paid for it. So I don't think any artists will pitch an idea that they themselves are not capable of, because I think the idea is that they put forth a proposal that includes themselves in it, and that they will be the ones who will be ultimately paid to create the art and have that displayed on whatever form that they've worked in collaboration with us and their their capabilities. That's my understanding of it, at least.
Well, Kai, I'm glad that all the artists you've ever worked with have a perfectly accurate view of their own skills and capabilities.
Oh, I see. Okay, maybe I'm just a little green here and don't. That was just the one project that I saw with Jenny Gao. So.
Okay.
Well, Dane Arts Mural Arts is a group that helps people through this process, and they come up again and again. And they were the Bay Creek neighborhood. This is across from the Lakeside Street Coffee House, a big mural that was done over there. So I think that this is one of the first stops that we'll make is to DAMA, the Dane Arts Mural Arts Group, and ask them about this and how best to get engaged with the people that are doing this work or capable of working, providing a design. I think that, it's an iterative process to come out with a design. There's a big landscape of what you could come out with. There's anything from, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band mosaic mural with everything on it, or, like some of our calendars, we've had beautiful, like the For What It's Worth tree diagram or a painting where it's more like, do we want just a landmark is what Enrique called it. Like someone says, hey, over on Washington or on East Johnson where there's the flamingos, everybody knows where that is. Is it that kind of a design that we want to settle on? But that's what I think. You ask artists, what do they think? How does it fit with the mission or the history, the diversity that WORT has? What fits for us? And let them bring those ideas out. So the execution, I think, is that comes a little later. But who's qualified? I think if they could manage through DAMA or answer to them, then I think they're probably qualified.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
There are other hands up.
I'm still waiting.
Go ahead, Susan.
I wanted to speak to two things. You might be surprised to learn, Patrick, that when I first came to WORT in 2014, the mural, I regarded the outside of our building as one of the most offensive sites in Madison, and looked into on my own, contacting various muralists and talking to them about what it was that they were looking for to make a decision about whether they wanted to engage in doing it. And they said, typically there's a brief that gives a pretty solid idea, such as we want it to represent community, or even more detail than that, depending on the organization. And secondly, they look at the dollar amount and what would be included as to whether they feel like their time is worth that. So those were two of the main things they were looking at. Is this something in my wheelbase? And how much, like if they're going to do the whole thing and make sure all the workers are there, maybe it's 20,000, or if they're responsible for the design and supervising workers, it's this much money. I think that, you know, they're business people. They might be interested in helping us out and having their art displayed, but it's also a business where they're making a decision about whether this was something that fits with their work. Not everything does. So that would be my first thing. But the main reason I raised my hand was I have no, you know, my job description does not include grant writing. I've done it for, you know, like Shali when she's had an opportunity for something and asked me to write a grant for it. But it's not something that I want to add on to my work. And I know that Sybil's made many suggestions about different things that art organizations in town can do. I would encourage that this ad hoc committee look at a staff member that's much more familiar with that grant landscape, because I have no experience with it. And to tell you the truth, I don't see how I'd fit it into my schedule next year. There's already grants I'm applying for Shali for the news department. In addition to my regular workload, I don't want to have to look into this part.
Yeah, Susan, 2 points. Yeah, I wouldn't want to load you up on this, but maybe you could consult as the process goes along.
Happy to help with grant writing and editing and stuff. I just don't want to do the research for what organizations might be a possibility, but I do tell you that Sybil constantly is forwarding information about various art organizations that we might want to consider working on various projects.
My own personal experience in industry and working with government grants is that there are so many that it's really the reporting and compliances could be onerous, the requirements of that. And so I think I'd prefer that. I mean, of course, if you could fund by gifting, but I mean, Enrique had $1,500 worth of grant money and very specific design. So I think that's something that it would be difficult to manage. It could add a whole lot more time and effort to I think what I like to do is work on this process, probably work with Dama, and from what I'm hearing here, I think it's a good idea to provide some kind of a brief or a basis to invite. We would have to invite artists or mural people to people that can submit a proposal for what they would do or how they would go about it, and then shortlist that very quickly.
Thank you. I'd like to go to Laura because she's had her hand up for a while.
Thank you. And thanks, Patrick, for your leadership on this. I wanted to concur with Kai and with Susan actually about the way the process probably will work. And yeah, I think it's unlikely that an artist is going to undertake something that they're not skilled at or that they don't have the means to follow through on. So I think that the board, the ad hoc committee, those people would be more of a filter for ideas rather than the originator of the ideas. And there are also the restrictions that the city has placed on the content of a mural and all of that stuff that you've been defining for us, Patrick, and investigating, researching. I was hoping that maybe you could refine a little bit. You've got the input And maybe you could scroll down a little on that, Dave, to go back to the diagram. Thanks. So you have the 3 inputs to the artistic concept. Maybe you could refine a little more of what that flow might be. And I don't mean now, I was thinking like, for the future, so that the board could get a better understanding of how that part of the process, this initial part of the process works. And I think you probably need some more input yourself before you can do that. But I think right now I'm having a hard time understanding how this all works sequentially. So that's my request.
Okay. Yeah, Laura, I think initially we thought maybe we'd get a concept and try an application, and that's a low risk effort to see, how far we could go. And that did not work.
Right.
As that, so backing up, how do we get that concept and the steps involved in that? I think getting a statement about our mission and engaging with Dama, and then talking, I would like to get authorization to talk to CNI. I mean, basically, there's certainly a lot more into that detail that the ad hoc committee can put together, or I can put together, but I just want to ensure that we have the right representations. If people have reservations about, fast forward the clock half a year from now, you don't want people saying, well, I didn't hear about this, or, oh, I didn't get the input I wanted. I did, what people's reservations were that weren't addressed. So,
Welcome to Madison.
at least you've been asked. That's the thing, whether or not, and someone listened, and whether or not you got exactly what you wanted, but you did have, you had an idea. I mean, this should be the fun part, right? Is doing the design and coming out with something really.
Stu, go ahead.
Yeah, where's the role for the board in approving the concept that is going to be implemented?
I don't have.
Let me refer. Where is the role for the board? Yeah, at the time, as I understand it, we're going to come up with this is what WORT stands for. We want a mural that represents what WORT stands for, WORT's mission, and WORT's community, right? At what point? So this committee is going to workshop that statement of artistic intent that is going to be what is shared as part of the request for proposal. Is that right?
Can we put move to create this committee and to bring these people and so that we have we can fine tune this? Because I mean, there's the rough process. Okay, exactly what's going to happen. I mean, I think the first thing, David, that you said was, well, of course, or I'm not sure if it was David or not, but before you get to a permit, the board is going to have to see what's coming through, where we're going, what direction we're going with this.
Oh, way before we get to a permit, before we get, I mean, the permit before or after we contract with the, it's before, huh? Okay. But don't we need a design before we can apply for a permit?
You need a conceptual design, and they're willing to do some iterations on that. If there's something that is a showstopper or for them, or something that they object to, it's better to come in early and rougher than come in with a final design. Is what I've heard.
Okay, and is that before or after we make a public statement? looking for an artist to execute a mural. Where's the solicitation of artists?
Well, that's another level of detail that isn't in here, but you form a committee. If you look at what was done over on ABC or Mifflin Street Co-op, they invited artists to come in, and we could do this, just basically go through DAMA and get a list of, and ask them with this mission that WORT has, what would you see, or are you interested? Who's interested in doing this? And then whittle it down to just a handful, a short list.
So the only prompt we're going to give them is a mural that represents WORT.
Are you interested in putting a mural on WORT? Like Enrique, for example, went through 3 different iterations. He had 3 different businesses that he had to work with, and he had to do it remotely. He said, you have to get together, but somebody had a picture of a crane, like a sandhill crane. And someone said, I compete with Central Waters Brewing. You can't have a crane in there. So, I mean, there are going to be some of these things that will come up. We have a lot of people that to try to get the concepts. I think, like the waterfront, for going back to that example, you find out who's actually capable of doing this and has the interest in doing it. And then ask them about to present their rough ideas, or how they would approach it, or why they should be on a short list. And then we can determine who we want to go with.
Kai has a question.
Perhaps it'd be better for Laura to speak first, only because I think it might be better for Laura to speak first in this case.
Okay, go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that I think we're stumbling over the initial, formation of a concept, that part of this whole process, and that maybe you could come back, Patrick, with a more fleshed out version of your flow chart there, so that I think that would answer many of Stu's questions. It would answer some questions that I have as to how we formulate this concept, and how, who's responsible at what part for making decisions. I understand you've got to, Patrick, you're going to have to reach out to the artists. You're going to have to try to please as many people as you can, or juggle a lot of competing interests. So I think if we have the basic structure of a process down, that that'll go a long way to satisfying people and their roles in where they fit in to the scheme.
I'd like to speak for a moment. One of the things we need is a staff member who will be sort of the guiding hand from the staff point of view, and the logical person, because this is a facilities issue, is Tom. And one of the problems is that the voice over IP project is going to take about 150% of Tom's time for the year of 2023. So it's going to be hard to get staff time to work on this project. So it's going to be a challenge. I think that if we could distill this down to the question of forming an ad hoc committee to pursue this further, and then ad hoc committee could help Patrick come up with an improved flow chart, and move in that direction. What do people think about that?
That was going to be my point precisely. I was going to say, I think that clearly Patrick's put a lot of time, energy, effort, and care into this. This is kind of, he said it multiple times. This is like the thing that he wants to get done in the 1 year, all being a board member. So clearly this is his primary interest. And, I think that if we gave him a little bit more resources, it might, bode us well to see what he could come up with if he had more people putting their efforts forth into how this will come about. So I think once like clearly the interest is there, there's a lot of effort, and maybe not all the kinks are worked out, but if you give some time, he seems to be coming up with more and more every single time he's presenting it to the board. So yeah, I would be comfortable with creating one and seeing where it goes.
Sounded like a motion to me.
Yeah, I would move that we move forward with Patrick's proposal to create an ad hoc committee to investigate some of these matters further. Regarding the art mural.
Okay. I think that sounds great. I don't know if I can second your motion, or if that's
Yes, you can.
Okay, I'll second the motion to form the ad hoc committee.
And would that be appointed by the president?
The makeup of the committee, is
Yeah.
that the question?
Kai, do you have a thought about that since it's your motion?
Oh, I do not know how work groups function precisely. I kind of thought that Patrick would wrangle up people that were interested and put them into this work group, but would someone like to help advise me on this? That was kind of where I was coming up with, like, okay, Patrick will find people to put into this work group that would be willing to work on this project alongside him.
Well, I'm okay with Patrick recruiting people, but I think ultimately, since this is going to be exercising some level of authority on behalf of the corporation, that the president needs to actually make the appointments.
There's something in chat by Ankita. Voting is the best way to go. Get stakeholders to vote on the final ideas, but that comes later. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so there's a lot more things we have to think about. Sure, the president, Patrick, you don't have any opposition to the president appointing people, like as a final say, perhaps?
I'm not, I think the president's in a better position to understand what stakeholders are really the most important in this. I can recommend people from I can interface with our alder or with, and I would go to the CNI group or people in, Fourth Ward Lofts. I know that the organization itself cannot sponsor this, but many of the people here would be interested in supporting or donating.
I would suggest that we add to the motion that Kai made that the president would approve membership of the committee.
And let me
This
ask,
is where a secretary would really come in handy right now.
and let me ask, how many staff do we have on the call right now?
2.
We got Susan and Tom, is that right?
Yes.
And no Doug. Is it within the board's authority or the collective's authority to determine who will or won't be responsible for staffing this function?
What does staffing this function exactly mean?
The exact things that you say you don't have time for. Can we say that or is this something that the collective will determine who has responsibility for this?
What I said I didn't have time for was soliciting the funding, and then is that where you're?
Well, and I guess, yeah.
I think, yeah.
Is it the staff collective? At some point, this is going to need staff support along the way, right?
Yes.
Okay, so the question
Patrick's
is,
not sure. David says yes.
yeah, so the question is this for the staff collected to determine whose responsibility, since this is not in anyone's, since we're absolving Tom of the responsibility because we've determined as the board he has a higher priority in dealing with the VOP, are we also taking to ourselves the authority to say whose responsibility this will be to staff, or are we going to leave that to the collective?
What if, okay, so I have a modification here that maybe takes care of some of the issues that you're talking about here, Stu. What if we say, Kai moves that the board create an ad hoc work group to investigate matters related to a mural project, and the president would approve a membership of the committee, and the work group will provide regular updates to the board for which they may need to approve further action. Does that take care of like future potential problems that might need to be referred back to us? It's still a little murky, but we're working on it.
Well, no,
I think we're struggling with the problem of how do we enlist the staff collective in supporting this enterprise, this mural.
I think one member of the staff has to be on this ad hoc committee.
Right, and my question is that for the collective to determine among itself?
I think so.
Okay, that was my question.
I think my question is further that does the staff collective wish to pursue this at all? So
the staff is in favor of the mural project. Our concern is whether looking at the upcoming year and what needs to happen, who has the availability and some of the insight to do this. And I think we can get back to you after the next staff meeting with that, but I believe that at least one member would be willing to do it, one member of the staff.
Fine.
I think it's more of a checking in, or actually to hear it from Enrique when he worked on projects. He says it's very important you get everybody in the room at key points where you're making the decisions. So it may not be a regular, it may be more of a consultative, but somebody that would always be in the loop. That would be the staff member. So you've got that link.
Hi, where were you typing that language down? Is that something that I can put in my minutes?
I just put it in the chat for the agenda.
Okay.
If you'd like to review that and see if everyone would like that to be there.
I don't see it in the chat.
It's in the chat for the agenda, so it's on the Google Doc, not the Zoom.
Oh,
I don't have Zoom on my computer. It's on my phone, so I'm talking in my phone right now.
Oh, okay. I'm going to stop sharing. And
you see it, Dave?
I don't.
Here's the new agenda.
Yeah, it should be like in the top. You see all those bubbles with our faces and letters in them? There should be a chat feature there.
I see it.
Yay.
I'm not there yet. Let's see.
Yeah, it's at the top. There's a bunch of bubbles saying who's there. Sometimes
Okay, the document you're typing in is the minutes, not the agenda. Those are two different documents. And
it says the agenda that I'm on right now.
Okay, I don't see anything in the chat in the agenda document right now. It's blank.
I put it there. Well, I'll just put it at the bottom then, so everyone can see it.
Open
Boom.
comment history. Okay, I see it.
Oh, okay. Well, well, it's at the bottom too. If you want to
Okay.
delete that at some point. Should I delete that now?
No, don't.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. If I go into the chat, am I going to see this? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I
I'll get-
put it, yes, but also I put it at the bottom since everyone seems to have, I don't know, I may have not done something correctly and people can't view it. So it's now at the bottom of the document. I'm going to highlight it in something absurd so that people know it's me. Look, it's in purple or pink or something.
Ah,
Let's do a light blue. It is in light blue. Well, maybe it's not. It's more like a. Okay, it's in light blue now. Yay. Light blue. There we go. Yeah, it's the bottom.
Okay. I have taken it from the chat, but in any case, I have it in my minutes document
It's
now.
my attempt at creating a motion for Robert's rules, which includes all our additions and such. Feel free to edit further, anyone else.
okay, I'm going to make one word change. The word
do it.
investigate, we've been doing a lot of investigation. We're this to develop a mural project.
To develop.
Because I'm looking for this board to authorize a go-ahead, with various stage gates or points of approval as we go along, and what the concept is, what we're going to send to the city, and then the points as we go along. But I think the main thing is for everyone to agree, yeah, we're going to do this. Yes, we are going to contact, we are going to get the approval of the past artists. That's going to be part of this. And we're going to go ahead with that. And we're going to we'll start to talk to people about it publicly. We'll sit in on the capital neighborhoods, for example. I think that's an important step.
So Kai moves that the board create an ad hoc work group to develop matters related to a mural project, and that the president would approve membership of the committee. And the work group will provide regular updates to the board and staff collective for which they may need to approve further action. And Patrick seconded.
That works for me.
Further
Okay.
discussion. May we move to a vote on this, or is there still questions?
Is there anything about, would this enable sitting in on a capital neighborhoods?
Yes.
Yeah, it would. Okay. That was just my question. Then I think it's good. Good by me. I still second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Are there any abstentions? The vote was unanimous. I should note that Dean wasn't feeling well and has left the meeting. So that finishes that item on the agenda. There were no action items in the rest of the reports, unless I took something wrong there. So Kai, you're muted.
Are you including the new business, or because it's technically not a report? Okay, great.
Yep,
So
new
we're on the
business
same
is after. I'm going to get to that as soon as I've determined that there are no other issues on reports.
Great, thanks.
Go ahead, Amber.
Yeah, so I have a question about the DEI survey. In the report, it said there's no board action needed. But I do have some questions about the survey, and it's being sent out under the name of the board. So I'm curious about what the process is for, like, finalizing it, and continue to have input on revisions before it's finalized.
That would be a question we can ask Susan, because she's a member of that committee. Go ahead, Susan.
The board approved the survey in either June or July. I'd have to look at the records. The DEI committee submitted it for board approval, and it has already been approved. Amber already sent me an email with a suggestion that I thought was a good one. And I've also asked Lucas Osmond to take a look at it one more time for any questions about disability and stuff. So the plan was during our early January meeting to look at it again and possibly come back to you guys at the January meeting for a chance for you to look over any changes if we do make them to reapprove it.
Thank you, Susan. Amber, does that answer your question?
I'm impartially, I think. So I understand that the board has already, is what the board approved the process of creating a survey?
No, we submitted the actual survey and the board approved the survey.
Okay, so then I'm not quite sure how to enter into this, but having now seen the document, from my point of view as a sociologist and somebody who teaches research methods and all the things, there are a number of places where there are some internal biases in the document that I think need to be addressed. There are also a couple of
Amber, you're welcome to attend the meeting. I said we're going to be revising it, and we welcome your suggestions. I'm not quite following what you want to accomplish at the board level that might be better accomplished by attending the meeting. And
that's what I'm asking. What is the ongoing process for revision? Because if this is going out under the board's name, it would be important, I think, to make, I mean, even if it's not going out in the board's name, it needs to do what, it needs to be able to accomplish what you're hoping it accomplishes. So are
your
you
opinion is very welcome at the next DEI meeting.
okay? Should I send you a written document?
If you want to do that before the meeting so we can pass that around there, that's great. But I'd like you to be at the meeting as well.
Yeah, if I can attend, I will.
Okay.
But you know, I think a lot of work on something like this happens not just in a meeting, but it's an ongoing editing process and review process. So,
yeah, Lucas is going to be submitting his suggestions for revisions based on his work as a disability advocate. And there are still a few more that, as long as we're doing all of this, I would like to add, for instance, a religious component to these. Many stations have that as part of their diversity question. So there's going to be a whole discussion of revisions, Amber.
and who are you then, the person who makes the revisions?
That me personally?
Yeah.
The work group.
The work group does, not me. We vote.
Okay, so who is the person who modifies the document?
It's done by a vote, like you guys are voting to word certain things or something. The DEI work group does the same thing.
I understand that they authorize, but who is the,
We word craft right in the meeting, and the ending part of that is something that is voted on then by the committee.
okay, I appreciate
Work
that.
group.
Okay.
I don't know how to put it any. I might be misunderstanding your question.
Yeah, well, I'm just asking who is the worker who's actually typing the changes? That's what I'm trying to get at. Like, who is the,
Alternates per each meeting. The person who moderates the meeting and the person who is doing that work changes each meeting. It's rotating. I'd have to look to see who's up next time.
all right.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Kai, did you have a question?
No. I at one point I wasn't sure if Amber had known that the survey was printed on the report that Susan put out, but it sounded like Amber did find it. So I was like, oh, well, no need to have my hand up anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, I've reviewed it, and I think it's in need of revision. And so that's what I'm trying to find out, is what the process is for that ongoing revising, if there will be revising. So
I don't think any board action is required at this time. I encourage you to work with the work group and on those revisions. That would be very much appreciated.
yep, will do. Thank you.
Other business on terms of reports.
Oh, I would like to say Adrian's not here, but that sticker design looks dope. I love it. Can't wait to see it printed.
They've already
Agreed.
been printed.
Oh, I don't have one. I want one.
I'll mail one to you.
Please. No, I can just pick it up. I can pick it up since you're there so late. I'm sure I'll see you at 10 p.m. one night.
Sure you will. Well, does any of the board want the new sticker sent to them? Do you have one, Stu?
No, yes, I do. It's on my laptop right now. So when I open my laptop at my student council meetings, everyone in the room can see my WORT sticker.
The rest of you guys, I'll mail you the new sticker to all of you.
Thank you. Rebecca just wanted one too, so. Who says board members don't get anything?
Dave, are you calling for comments and questions on the staff reports now? Is that where we're at?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to finish up. Is
Yeah,
staff reports.
I just want to let people know that they'll see in Sybil's report what we believe is now the conclusion of the Pan-Africa drama. In that yesterday was 2 days ago was the deadline for the appeal, and one was not filed. But your personnel committee, I think, did a good job. We interviewed all the parties. We had very productive conversations with Pop and with Sybil and with the members of the Pan-Africa Collective. And we still have some work to do on the basic, what it means to have or be a collective. And that's something that we need to keep working on. But I think we did a good job in getting a handle on what the situation was. And I'm comfortable with the conclusion we came to.
Thank you. I should have made that a personnel committee report, but such is life. I didn't do that. Are there any questions about that issue? There were a number of issues that were brought into our view that we think need clarification. What does it mean for there to be a collective of a program, and how do the collectives operate and make decisions? And I don't know how much else I want to get into, but if there are questions, I can certainly answer them. Hearing none, I would like to move on to new business. Everybody comfortable with that? Susan sent in an email. I have linked it on the agenda item. And so there's, first of all, an email from Susan. And then from the Community Council initiatives, there's a report and a participant agreement that are linked on the agenda documents so that you can read them. Susan, would you like to speak to that?
I'm going to assume because it was sent so late that most of the board hasn't had a chance to look at it. Is that a correct assumption, probably?
I think so.
Okay, so the NFCB is the National Federation of Community Broadcasters. It's a group made
Let
up.
me interrupt for just a second. Ward is a member.
Yep. One of the very earliest members, yeah. And it's made up of all community broadcast stations as opposed to public radio. In the last 3 years, they have started something called Community Counts Initiatives. These are modules that you sign up for under various topics, and you do an intensive drill down that involves small groups of matched cohorts, which would be stations similar in size and in other metrics to your own. You have individual one-on-one counseling with the NFCB and the consultants that they've hired to work on these topics. And there's also work to be done within the groups, which generally amounts to about 4 hours of work a month. This next year, the proposal is to, sorry about that.
What? What happened?
My phone is ringing.
Oh,
and I'm down in the downstairs of my loft. So I'm
okay.
hoping they just shut up, whoever they are. Yes. Anyway, this year for the first time, there's going to be 3 of them. One is a DEI one that starts in July. That's what caught my eye. In order to participate in the DEI, you need 2 things. You need a staff member who is willing to do the 3-month amount of time that the unit is going to require, and you need a board member. Both of them have to sign on to, only 2 can participate. One has to be staff, one has to be board, and it has to be the same people for the length of the module. The only cost involved in this is that in June 27th and 28th, when they hold the NFCB meeting, all of the different modules are going to have an intensive part that is a day earlier than the regular
All right, thanks.
meeting. And you have to be there, you have to sign on to say that you're going to attend that one of the staff members is going to attend the NFCB meeting. It doesn't have to be one that's associated with the module. We also have to participate in the first module because it's the introductory one that gains you entry to any other future modules, and that's the circle of engagement. So the general idea is that they've hired national consultants for the 2nd and 3rd modules who are going to be helping the NFCB do this. There's only 10 stations to 12, depending on the module, that can participate in this. They assign it a $30,000 value. And one of the other things that I sent to the board was the basically reviews of the work in the past. This is the first year that they're requiring a board member to participate because they want to see better buy-in from the board and to make sure that the board is being informed and up to date and on board with what the work is. They were very, Laura attended the meeting with me, and I would love to have her add in, but they were very, they let us know that things are able to be modified to what we need and what we want to accomplish and where we are at right at the time. This isn't their directive to have you end up at a certain place. It is their their idea to help you have the tools and the best available information to get things done that you want to get done at the station. And I'd
Oh.
love to have Laura step in because I'm blanking and I want to have a chance to organize my thoughts if I come back.
Go ahead, Laura.
The modules, there are 4 modules. One is the circle of engagement. That's the prerequisite for all of the rest of the modules. Dynamic community government, governance is the next module. Then, and that starts in April, goes through June. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging is the 3rd module, and that goes from June through September, or actually, I think it runs even later than that. And then there's a 4th module that is called the Public Safety Toolkit. It's kind of an add-on. I'm not sure they called it a module and then they said it's not a module, but that's neither here nor there, I think. But the point is that you kind of have to, the minimum that we would have to do is the circle of engagement, and the diversity module is then available to us. And the in-person meetings take place in Denver. Susan said she thinks there's funding available for that.
In the
Takes
budget,
place specifically once at the conference. The only time there's an in-person meeting is at the conference. There's one in-person meeting.
Per module. So if you're going to do the dynamic community governance module, there's an in-person meeting and then a different one for the diversity, equity, inclusion
Right. I
module.
just wanted to point out that there aren't at all different times. We're not going to go to Denver 3 times or anything. You go once.
Right.
I have a
And,
question, but
and,
stand by Kai.
and the board member and the staff member would have to go, because they're the same two are meant to carry through the entirety of the module.
You're correct.
From beginning to end.
Correct.
So that I have more to add, but
how do we deal
I
with
can do that later.
How do we deal with the money question? Do you need board approval for the cost of the conference, of travel, and of lodging?
Yes, because it's not in the budget. But I'd like to reach out to, none of those figures are out yet. You know, they typically get lower room rates by doing that and other stuff, and we don't have those. I'd like to have the opportunity to reach out and find out exactly how much that is.
Since we don't have that information at this meeting, I don't think we can approve it at this meeting. It's certainly something that the executive committee could approve after this meeting takes place.
Can you authorize up to a certain amount?
We could.
You could do that at this meeting.
Go ahead, Kai.
I just wanted to ask, is there a reason it needs to happen now? I thought there was some urgency attached to this request. It says urgent request. So what's the limitation here?
We have to submit the signed agreement to participate before the end of the month.
Okay, so if we give this signed agreement, what's the penalty for withdrawing from it?
None.
So we could just submit that. So actually, we could just submit and then secure our spot and then withdraw later if something ends up not well, right?
We are taking a seat away from someone else if we do it.
But does it take a seat away, or is there like a wait list that's, you know? I'm not sure. Does it serve that function, or will the person come away with?
I would like to be a little bit more invested than just saying, I mean, I'm happy to get it signed and then to work out the details later, but I'd like to have the board be a little more invested in it than that much, I guess is what I'm saying.
I think it would be disingenuous of us to sign a commitment and then, to back out of it.
Just
It-
because there isn't a penalty, I agree. I think our word is worth more than that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess there would be a good reason ideally. It's not like we wouldn't be going into this with the intention of backing out of, you know what I mean? Like, it's
Okay.
just knowing that it's an option. I'm not saying that we sign up for things and then go, haha, like we did that to take up a space and purely and solely for that reason only. We would be going into it with the intention and knowing that that does exist as an option without a penalty if it's needed.
I'd like to back up a minute and get a little bit of foundation about this request. First of all, two questions. Has the DEI work group voiced an opinion on this? And the second question is, has the staff collective reviewed this issue?
Susan and I are the only two who have delved into this. I think that others are aware of it. Adrian, I'm pretty sure, knows about the CCI initiative, but it's Susan and I who have, done the webinar and who did the call today with Sally Kane and the other Sally. I'm forgetting her name.
Hardy, Sally Hardy.
Thank you. So
I just don't want
we
to get
have
into
yet to present this before the committee. I'm sorry, the work group. We haven't had a meeting. I mean, and this call just occurred this afternoon at noon.
So
I don't want the staff collective to get blindsided and say, who's asking for this and why didn't we hear about this first and so on. So I want to make sure that everybody's on board before we jump out. Susan, do you have a feeling about how the staff will feel about this?
I don't think the staff will care as long as somebody is willing to step up and do the stuff. I've already said I'll step up for DEI to be the staff member. But I agree with you, Dave, and if there is a motion that's passed, I would ask it to include subject to staff approval and DEI approval. I don't think DEI is going to have any problems with it. I had sent the initial thing that we received from the NFCB, the initial email that talked about the DEI unit. So they're vaguely aware of it, but we really didn't have details until today.
Understood. The other question is, in terms of the mechanics of this meeting, we have to figure out where this motion is coming from, because technically you're not a member of the board, so you can't make a motion, and this isn't part of a board report or a staff report. So I think we need a board member to make a motion to initiate this. Is that idea understood by the board?
Yes.
Laura, do you want to make a motion?
Well, I want to express a concern first.
Okay.
And that is that I think there's a lot of commitment here. The circle of engagement, the prerequisite for the DEIB component, seems to want us to involve ourselves in making a strategic plan. A strategic plan seems like a heavy lift for our board right now, and the staff. I don't know that we're willing to put that amount of effort. Again, I worry that we're taking on. We are only one of 10 or 12 different stations that is able to do this at this time. And so I really want us to follow through if we do make this commitment. Otherwise, we'll be displacing some other station that could probably really use it. So I mean, is this something that we really want to do? Are we in a place to do this and to provide it the attention that it's probably going to need? And I don't think that this, I think that the DEI committee doesn't necessarily have to do this community counts initiative. I mean, we can still do our work even if we don't do the CCI initiative this time around. We could probably do this another time. So those are just my initial thoughts on all of this. But I would make the motion so that the board would have a chance to vote on it.
And Kita, you have a hand up?
Yeah, I wanted to,
Go ahead.
yeah, I wanted to second the motion.
Okay. Thank you. I'm a little bit unsure of what the motion is.
I haven't made a motion yet.
So I raised the hand in anticipation that Laura would make one that I would want to second, but then Laura didn't make one, and so my hand is still up.
Okay. I am concerned about the word strategic plan. That's a big thing.
For a minute. The goal of the circles of engagement, they specifically said, was to meet you where you were. One of the things that they offer is help in working on strategic planning and the idea of setting goals and actually figuring out metrics. That's one of the things that circles of engagement has. Many of the people, they said, do not end up doing a strategic plan as part of the work or afterwards. They specifically said, this is designed for you. You know, we design, that's why it's limited to very few people to say, where are you and what's going to help you get to where you want to be? If we don't want to work on a strategic plan at this minute, that's not part of the requirements of the circles of engagement. It is much more individualized than it. I think you guys are hearing it. It's much more directed toward where do you want to get with this?
Okay, I appreciate that. I still see hands up. Stu, did you have a question?
Yeah, Susan, when I'm having trouble understanding why I saw this hours before I was expected to vote on it.
Because the thing that they had sent around was very general. You had to make an appointment in order to get further information about it. The appointment was today. That was the earliest appointment I could get.
And how long has this thing, how long has this been in the wind? I mean,
like 3 weeks. With just a general thing. I didn't want to, until I knew more about it. I didn't know if there were costs associated. There were a bunch of questions that I sent and was told those are all answered in the informational meeting.
I believe the notice would have been the webinar that they provided on November 14th. So it's been almost exactly a month.
it's not much lead time to get an application, make a commitment.
It,
I mean, that does not impress me about the organization that they give 4 or 5 weeks to sign on to something that could involve considerable commitment of staff and board time.
True.
And we're looking at 2 major projects in the next 12 months, the audio over IP and the mural. And both of them are going to require money and staff time and board time. So
I think we need to see if there's any, we need to gauge the interest of at least one board member who is committed to doing this. I can think of two likely people whom I would assign if it came to that, but I'd be interested to know, do we have somebody putting their hand up to say they're willing to be the board member to make this commitment?
I would be specifically interested in the DEI component. I'm not sure that I'm interested in the circle of engagement, but it's the prerequisite. Sorry, I can't be more committal than that.
Well, you were one of the
mind-
two, but you were one of the two.
I wouldn't mind taking a partial commitment to this, depending on what the specific needs were, and especially as it coincides with my tax season, since I'm super busy during then.
But as I understand, it's got to be one person has to commit to all the entire program.
Is that true?
That module, yes.
But it's on a per module basis, if
That's what
I
I thought,
understood
yeah.
them correctly.
Oh, it's on
Yeah,
per-
so one
okay.
person could pick a module. So like theoretically in that scenario, it's like, great, don't pick me during March or April, maybe even May. I don't know. But I wouldn't mind, committing part of my time.
See, that sort of thing is on my mind too, because I'll be retiring in July, early July, and that coincides when the DEI component begins.
And I'd also like to suggest that perhaps whoever is doing this module be excused from having to participate in other committees, since it is already a 4-hour commitment. But yeah, unless somebody's willing to sign up to do a board member's willing to sign on to do the circle of engagements, then if no board member is, then doesn't matter. We can't do it.
What's the commitment?
4 hours a month, 2 hours of active sessions, and then 2 hours virtual, at your laptop kind of thing.
I wouldn't mind taking on a few months in that scenario.
It's 3.
But when are those 3 months? It's not January, February, March, is it?
Unfortunately, I believe it is.
I think I'm out for that.
It's January, February, March.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that I'm capable of doing that.
yeah, Kai, can you put your hand down when you're done?
Well, I never got to make my initial point, actually.
Okay,
Can I make my initial point now?
you can.
Okay, well, yeah, so earlier we had a discussion about strategic plan. I think a strategic plan would be good. Whether or not we have the capacity to undertake that right now, that is a different question. But I think Amber's been making good points earlier, and whether or not we have the capacity, I think we can find the time to start making progress on it. I mean, isn't that the point of having a committee? As we're talking about forming this committee, it definitely can start moving towards the idea of creating a strategic plan for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I don't think it's a bad thing. Yes, we do have other things to balance, but I don't think that because we're working on other stuff doesn't mean we can't also work on this in whatever capacity, just to move things along. Point 2, I would be okay with moving forward with this plan as long as we had a financial limit. It sounds like we don't have the numbers yet on what the cost would be and what we're even requesting from the board. Susan suggested that we could approve this plan potentially while having like up to a limit. So I'm comfortable with that as long as we choose an acceptable limit. Third point here, I think that it'd be good for whoever the member is that could sign up for this to give a presentation at the end of it and have some notes that they submit to the board for what they've learned from these circle conversation things, whatever's going on there. Because I think it'd be good for us to have like a written like proof of concept of what we've learned and how we can push it forward so that people, we have something moving forward from these accounts. in this event.
I again reiterate that the amount of board time is limited, and I mentioned the audio over IP, and I mentioned the Miro, and we also have the audit. And so, and the fact that we don't have a secretary because we can't find a board member who's willing to make that commitment means it's hard to justify adding another commitment to some board member right now. So I'm a little bit cautious about approving this. Amber, go ahead.
Yeah, I certainly am in alignment with Kai's idea that it would be a good idea to have a strategic plan. I think we should particularly have a strategic plan about, DEI. However, if board members were to take that on, then we could apply the hours that would be pulled into passively observing a webinar or participating in these other kinds of meetings that are outside of our station and really buckle down to do the work organically from in the interior of WORT. So given that time and energy is limited, that would be my preference rather than getting involved with something that's external, really actually moving forward and building momentum internally toward that goal of having a strategic plan in general or a DEI specific strategic plan.
I see Laura has a hand up, and Kai has made a comment, and Stu is interested in making a comment. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Laura?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not getting the impression that there's a lot of buy-in from the board right now. I'd like to hear more discussion about that. Who's actually willing to take the time? I think that if one board member takes a module, that it would behoove the staff and the rest of the board to to learn from that, to have meetings to pass that along to just one board member and one staff member retaining this knowledge. I don't think that's of much benefit to the station as a whole. So how do we disseminate this? I'd like to hear who's willing to get more involved besides the two members, the one member of the staff and the one member of the board. That's a discussion I'd like to hear.
Susan, go ahead.
That was one of the things that they addressed. It's two members that attend the meetings, the one-on-one meetings, the webinars, etc. But you're expected, the staff member is expected to go back to the staff and report on this stuff and initiate any kind of thing that the staff or the board wants to initiate in reaction to it. It isn't supposed to be the work. We're just the representatives, just like you guys are the representatives as a board. Just like, Doug is a representative of the staff, but that doesn't mean Doug does all the staff work. The idea is that you come back, Laura. Are you muted?
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute myself. There we go. I want to, yes, I agree. I mean, I know this. My point is that you have to have willing participation on the part of your fellow board members and your fellow staff members. And I don't know that I hear that there's a lot of buy-in.
I'm going to agree with you. I think
we haven't presented it to them yet, though.
As much as it disappoints me, because these modules change from year to year. So the year after this, we might not have the benefit. And as much as I feel like I'm not doing a good job of explaining the value of this, of the extreme, the access that we're having to the very best people that are working on these things. You know, a $30,000 value did not sound out of the way for what the NFCB is contracting for and what they say a station would have to pay in order to get this individualized attention and detail of having it be something that is specifically designed for your station. This is not a general, here's what you could do, and here's just a cookie cutter thing. The limit of 10 is because they're going to personalize stuff. I'm sad that that the board, that I don't hear more commitment, and I feel it's my failure to convey what I understood. But I have the benefit, Laura, that you don't, that I have heard many people for the past 2 years say that this was an invaluable thing that they did, that it made a huge difference to their station. But if our board member, if nobody's willing to commit to this, then perhaps this is an initial discussion, and I do a better job of keeping people informed of things, and we come back next year and do it when, you know, it isn't a surprise that's sprung at everyone at the last minute. But I do feel bad that I feel like I'm not doing a good job.
Susan, I don't think it's that you're not doing a good job. It's that people are looking at their available resources and not finding enough resources there.
Yeah, I want to reiterate that. Susan, I don't think you failed anything here. Honestly, you came in like right at the last second, and because you learned about it right then. So what do you expect? Like, people can't just change their schedules or anything like that. Like, you know, like if I knew things beforehand, maybe there's like better ways I could better prepare for it. It's not that we don't see the value. It's more like people just, you know, aren't as flexible to take on new opportunity like that. You know, because earlier in the meeting, Laura mentioned that, you know, this could be really good, and maybe it could be good for next year. Maybe we're learning about it too late to, you know, make use of this opportunity, because it sounds like this is a thing that goes on from year to year. I'm not sure we're going to miss out on much if we wait till the next year and put forth money in there. Maybe there's a way to include that money in the budget, and then we'll have a lot of time to think about these things, because maybe this is one of those things where you needed to be in the know, and we just weren't in the know until, you know, too late to really take advantage of it. That's my take on it, at least.
Go ahead, Stu.
If I'm reading the participant agreement correctly, they want to know by next week or 2 weeks from tomorrow who the actual participants are going to be, and we don't know that right now. We do not have. Susan, do you have staff commitments for all 3 modules?
I am committed to the DEI.
Okay.
And I will commit to circles of engagement if there is a board member that will do it. Because in order to do DEI, you have to do circles of engagement. If we ever want to do any of these modules in the future, we have to do a circles of engagement. Once you get that out of the way, it's out of the way for the next years, you know, but it is something you have to do before you participate in any of their modules.
And that's next month. So someone has to know. And is that all online, or what is that?
Nope, there are small group meetings you have to attend. I think there should be listed on there. There's dates on the second, right, Laura? I don't have the document in front of me.
Oh, January. Okay, so but is that online, or does that have to be someplace?
No, that's all of it's virtual. The only time you have to be someplace is at the NFCB conference in the end of June. That's the one time you have to be in a particular place.
Yeah, it seems like the small group meetings are virtual.
They are. They're all virtual
Yeah.
because they're from all over the country.
So, yeah, you see the schedule on that, participant agreement. There's a schedule on page 2 and 3.
So even if you were out of the country, you could do this.
So how many circle of engagement meetings are there? It looks like that goes on throughout. Is that,
No,
or is that just goes through May? Is that right? No, yeah, goes through May. No, goes the whole year.
does
That's a
not
year.
does not go the whole year.
Well, it goes to October.
Yeah, the last one's in October. That's when the circle of engagement module ends. So it overlaps the rest of the modules. And Stu brought up a good point. We really don't know what kind of investment time-wise the staff is willing to make of it. We've only heard from you, Susan. What about the rest of the staff? Are they going to have time to receive the knowledge that you will be
Right.
relaying?
That's something that has to be discussed by staff at the next staff meeting on Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, Susan, I hope you do recognize that giving people who actually check their email before the meeting half an hour notice of making this extensive a commitment is kind of,
Yes. I do absolutely recognize that. And I am starting to appreciate the fact that with as much that we are undertaking next year, this is probably a heavy lift and can be postponed, but I sincerely will make the effort all next year to keep you guys up to date as much as I can by asking for information, more information on exactly what the circle of, maybe they'd even allow me to audit and be completely silent, which goes against all my grain in a couple of meetings, so I can get an idea for the next time, because that one is one that we'll have to do if we ever want to do any of them. So I will make that commitment and drop. I mean, I can't make any motion, but it sounds like there isn't the backing and you guys don't feel like you have enough knowledge, and I will commit to the next year keeping you better informed and keeping myself better informed about this. And I would encourage you guys who aren't on the NFCB listserv, we are a member. As many people who want to be on the listserv from WORT can be on the listserv. It covers a lot of topics. It has.
I can help with that if you want help
It
in subscribing.
definitely has a station manager part that I feel the board should be aware of, where there's discussions of station manager type of supervisory stuff and other things that happen there. But just in general, it discusses every aspect of radio, community radio work. So please consider joining that. And as part of that, you have access to their Solutions Center, which offers guidance on policies and bylaws on every single thing that a community radio station does.
It's excellent documentation. And Susan, I want to say before we wrap up on this that I totally understand why you're advocating for it. It's an excellent opportunity. And I'm sure that the station could make really good use out of it. But it's just, yeah, I just don't know that we can give it its due, if you will. at this point in time.
Ankita, did you have a question?
I just wanted to say that in January, all through the month, like I will be outside United States. I'll be traveling in India and Turkey, and the internet connection might not be like at all possible for me. Plus, I'm going there for medical reasons as well. So, long story short, if somebody can help me like cover January, then I can make the commitment.
They won't let us do that. And can I just, because I keep hearing different things and you're very polite about this.
Sorry, I did not get that.
Can you repeat your first name? Because I keep hearing it mispronounced by people.
Yeah.
I know it might not be bugging you and you don't want to say it, but it's bugging me.
My name is Ankita.
So it's not Ankita. It doesn't have each syllable is equally stressed. Ankita, right?
Yes. So like when you say señorita, so you know how the TA in the señorita is pronounced? So that's exactly how Ankita is pronounced, the last of, at least the last TA sound.
I loved that description. That was great.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you wouldn't be able to do it because it has to be the same person continuously. That is one of their requirements. And like I said, after listening to you guys, I am convinced that we aren't ready to take it on with the other stuff that we're doing. So I appreciate the discussion and I see where I need to put some work in next year to getting the board ready to maybe do this in the following year.
The other thing is that my term and Marty's term is ending next year. So we don't know if we're going to get reelected. So
Marty's term or?
Marty's term and my term end in June. So
okay.
I think so. So I really appreciate that, Susan, that you're trying to move us forward in the right direction, and it's regrettable that we don't have the resources to be able to follow through on that.
I appreciate that all of you guys are thinking of a real global picture in making that decision.
Thank you. We don't have a motion to vote on. So are there any other items to discuss in new business? Thank you very much. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I heard Marty move.
Oh, great. Second that.
Second.
Give that to Ankita.
Yay, Kai. Pronounced it correctly.
I think so. I don't, hope so.
Very good. All opposed, say no. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Testing us today.
Thank you all very, very much.
Have a good
Thanks.
evening, everyone.
Thanks,
Happy
Dave. Have a good night.
holidays.
Happy
Happy
holidays.
holidays.
Happy holidays.
Thanks for moving the meeting.
Yeah.